We're good, Bill? So, good evening, everyone. Dan, we have an agenda set up with introductions, overview of the existing ordinance and the application form that I previously emailed everybody, and then Dan re-emailed the ordinance today. Discussion of previous tax abatement, state statute issues that Gia attached to a follow-up reminder email, a potential application that I'd like to just discuss in some broad terms today. New business next meeting, though that's our set out agenda. We don't, we are going to have a follow-up meeting to this meeting to address an actual application in the coming weeks. This is more of an organizational meeting. So Dan Shopik advised me that we need to, in our next meeting, elect a chairman. We did not change the agenda to notice that that would be an item, so he suggested that we elect a temporary chairperson for tonight's meeting. So Dan, how would we go about that? Would we ask for nominations?
I nominate Carl Massaro as the temporary chairman of the committee. Is there a second?
No, I can't vote.
Nina, you don't get a vote.
I know.
I need a committee member to second. Seconded by Massimo. All in favor? Aye. Happy temporary chairmanship, Carl.
I'll add that to my collection. Thank you. I think I've been chair of this before.
Imagine, Carl, you can put on your obituary that you were the.
Yeah, that's all that's left.
Oh, geez.
All right, so let's hit the agenda. We did our introductions. I don't know if we know each other. Hi, Fred. How are you? And Lynn. I don't know if either of you have served on this committee before. I think Jason has, and I have. And Mike Holohan is also a council member. This is his first foray into the tax partnership, tax abatement world. But he's got a good background and he'll be very helpful here.
Massimo is also new to this committee. He's
Are you, is he on here?
Yes.
I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't see him. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I guess that's the introduction part of the program, the overview of the ordinance and application. Dan, do you want to speak to that?
I think in basic terms, I think the ordinance that's in place is limiting as it compares to the statute that's been amended. The amended statute from the state legislature would allow the town to have 30-year tax incentives, and it broadens the people or the companies or the uses that can make application. One of the things that we had looked at, and I know Rena's going to talk about the possible. There is a company presently looking to lease space in Trumbull. I believe that's still the plan.
No, it would be purchased, but that's
They're
okay.
going to purchase it, okay. But when we started talking about this, based on our ordinance, there was first of all, they had to be under contract to purchase. And right now, I think the way the enabling statute reads, they could have an intention to come into town. And then again, you get into what the parameters should be. I think again, this being an enabling statute, this doesn't give us the right as of today to basically bypass the ordinance. I think Carl, it goes into your domain, what you'd like to put on, how you want to come out of this, what you'd like to put on the council agenda to loosen up the criteria. And that's kind of the overview. Right now, we have, and I know I provided everyone with a copy of the current agreement that we have with 100 Oakview Drive, which was, I believe, a 7-year agreement. And the percentages that,
Believe it's 10 years.
okay, I stand corrected. But but it was otherwise, limited. It's still in effect, and they're still getting the benefit of that. As you look at it, and you look at the success, or again, part of what you guys, this committee is here to do is to assess how this has worked, and whether it ought to be extended. Or, I suppose that today, if 100 Oakview Drive came back and asked for an extension on that, if the Rena's shaking her head no, but it ain't gonna happen, Rena, or
No, absolutely not.
okay. One of the things I know that I have, and just based on my own experience with a client who was leasing commercial space down in Norwalk, where the Sono Center has a tax abatement, and they refuse to pass that on to the tenants. So, that's something, if it's something you want to think about in future, amendments to the ordinance. If the landlord's getting the benefit of that tax abatement, my feeling is it's only fair that the tenants participate in that in some way. But
Dan, that wasn't included in their lease, that they would get the benefit of
it was
any
not.
membership?
I mean, that was an argument I had in negotiating the lease and dealing with Brookfield, who basically said, "This is it. Take it or leave it." And so we took it. But
So, Mr. Chairman, can I give us a little context? Because I was deeply involved in crafting the ordinance and the application and did a lot of research back in 2017 on successful tax programs. And Dan is right, whatever we were able to do back then had to be allowable under the state enabling statute. But Trumbull, in my history here, which is only 9 years long, has done one abatement, 10 Trumbull. It is my understanding that back when I believe Ray Baldwin was in office, they did a tax abatement for Unilever back then. I think it was in either 2003 or 2006, something like that. Those are the only two I was able to find, not the smaller stuff that we do for individual residents or the solar stuff that we do, but I'm talking about a tax forgiveness or a tax assessment fixing for a company. Those are the two that I was able to find when we were doing the research. And we really talked a lot about, I think some communities go wild with tax abatements. If you know about all of the development that's happened on 48 Monroe Turnpike and a little bit on Route 25 in Monroe, every one of those projects has a tax abatement, every single one. And they've abated all the taxes on those developments. Trumbull has not been a real, to my knowledge, free-wielding tax abatement community, and for good reason. I think that we have a great community. We're able to attract business and development, and we should use it selectively. And within the ordinance, there are some criteria that come into play if you review the application, the blank application. Is the property underperforming in some way, right? Will there be jobs added or benefits to the community? Remembering that this is not a decrease from the existing taxes on the building. The existing taxes on the building cannot be reduced. This can only reduce the growth by percentage over a number of years is how ours is structured. So in the case of 10 Trumbull, when we did that abatement, the taxes on that property at the time were, I believe from memory, $114,000. There was a 70,000 square foot vacant, obsolete office building. It was paying $114,000 in taxes. In the first year of the 10 Trumbull, they were before they even finished building out, they paid 300 and something thousand in taxes. They're up in the 600 and something now, according to their schedule. So there's been tax growth along with the development. It just isn't at its full, what the full assessment would be and the full tax yield would be. That is discounted. And we looked at that tax abatement as a way to draw investment to an area that was 60% vacant and declining and underperforming in terms of the whole area. And we saw that application as a catalyst to attract other development in the neighborhood, which it's done, and to attract businesses to the neighborhood, which it's done. It's really an example of how an abatement, in my opinion, should be crafted and should be used. That was a different type of application than what we were expecting to come to us next, because that was housing related. But what's expected to come to us next is an underperforming property. And when we get to that point on the agenda, I'll discuss some of these things. And it is a straight business corporation that would move from one town to our town, purchase a building, and move their entire operation here with jobs. And if you looked at our application, we ask, how many jobs will you be creating? We ask also how much investment you're making in the building up and above the cost of the real estate. So when we have thresholds, if you make 3 million up to a certain amount, in the way our current ordinance is, you can get so much of a discount. If you make $15 million in investment, you can get up to the, a larger length of time. So that's how the existing ordinance is. But Dan provided us with, and Gia circulated, there were changes to the state statute that allow us to go more years. And we have to determine on one track if we will amend the ordinance at all. We don't have to. We can have less, or if we would do it now or in the future. So I can tell you that the application that I expect to get, I've seen a draft of it. Okay, they're editing some pieces that I expect to get is asking for more years than what our current ordinance allows for the amount of capital investment that they're making. And even if they were making the top, 15 or more, they're looking for somewhere around a 20-year assessment fix. And I don't have that application in front of me finalized, but this is what I've seen. And the reason is that this company has an opportunity to build where they are, or to buy a building that is a declining asset in foreclosure in our town that has been looked at by nonprofit users as well. So we would not want the asset to continue to decline. It's in foreclosure. It's been vacant. It's been vacant since 2014. Unilever mothballed the building. They then sold it somewhere around 2017-18 for a few million, cheap sale. They then sold it again after that. That owner made money on it and sold it for like 4 million something. Okay. The building is nowhere near what it was assessed back in 2015 in terms of the current value of it. It has been, none of the new owners have been able to re-tenant the property. There's really 2 tenants, really only 1 legitimate tenant on the first floor that's relocated into 55, into an adjacent building, I should say. So the reason that they haven't been able to re-tenant this building is that the building was built for a single user. And to re-tenant, to multi-tenant a single user building is extremely difficult. So each of the owners that purchased, whether it was the owner right after Unilever owned it or the sale, they tried. They've had good brokers on this. We've talked numerous times. I've held events in the building to try to attract. We had a brokers event. We've tried to attract tenants. We did move one company into the building from Fairfield. Again, that's the company that we've relocated to the building next door because of the concerns with this building. They've basically, that second owner gave the building up pretty much because they just are trying to wash their hands of this building. So we don't, again, this is a little bit of a different type of application. They're trying to close a gap between what it would cost them to build on a piece of property next to their existing building in the town they're currently in, which is in what they call a opportunity zone. And that is something that applies in more distressed communities. We're not eligible to be an opportunity zone because our demographics don't meet that criteria. So they have some tax incentives already in that community, and they would have some pretty robust tax incentives on a new building there. But they like this opportunity. Vicki and I have met with them multiple times. We have toured their facility. We have met their employees. We want them here. These are good jobs. And these are professional jobs. It would add to our ecosystem of businesses in our town and in our corporate park. This is a growing business. It is a technology, R&D, manufacturing business. It employs engineers, innovators, salespeople worldwide, so forth. This building that they're looking at is over 110,000 square feet, and again, built for a single user. And that means the floor plates are not divided up like you would see in a multi-tenant building. The way they would have access to restrooms, to other common facilities. And there's one elevator bank, which is very undesirable in a multi-tenanted building. So there's other things too, but HVAC, other things like that you can understand what it would take to separate all of that and make it a multi-tenant situation. So it's a very difficult property, and to find a single tenant that pays taxes, that's not a nonprofit, not that I'm against nonprofits, but you get my point, or a church, mega church, or something like that. We're not against any of those kinds of organizations. But when we're talking about our commercial property, we have to try to keep it on the tax roll and bring jobs, etc. So we are, in a sense, competing with a situation where they're going to stay either in the community that they're in and build new. They have a 20,000 square foot facility. They have an ability to build 30,000 square feet on a piece of real estate they own adjacent to their building. That, to me, and what Vicki and I have talked to them about, is a short to mid-term solution for their company. This building is a long-term solution for their company. This is a 20-year plus. They can stay and grow and innovate in this building. But the numbers are a bit out of whack. I think that covered some background on the state statute, the existing, and the potential applicant.
So this prospective applicant would be a single user,
Yes,
all right? Okay. Probably what we need to do is do some comparison between what the state statute enables a municipality to do and what our ordinance does, and whether we should stretch some of our requirements to be something somewhat closer to the state statute allowances or not. The committee always has the discretion to, let me back up, stretching our ordinance out would require an act of the town council. Even if we do that, both the council and this committee, which would bring forth an application to the council for approval, for a tax abatement agreement approval, we don't have to give what either the statute allows or what our ordinance allows. And we did not, in fact, do that with the, what'd you call it, 10 Oakwood, 10
10
Reservoir?
Trumbull.
10 Trumbull, okay. So that's an exercise I don't think we can do right now. It would take a while to go through each section of the statute and look at the ordinance and how they measure up to each other. We can probably do that independently. We can ask the town attorney to do that for us. And Rena, you can tell us what what parameters are not that might work for this prospective applicant.
Did I freeze or did Carl?
I thought you did. I kept
Okay.
talking. Did everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. It must have been me. Sorry, Carl. I know you were talking to me, but I couldn't
Yeah,
hear.
well, I was speaking generally. We're talking about stretching the provisions of the ordinance to the limits that the state statute allows. We can choose to do that. We need to study the differences and recommend to the council some adjustments to our ordinance. And generally said that council is the final voice of whether we give any tax abatement agreement. And obviously a recommendation for it would come from this body, the Tax Screening and Planning Committee. So my question to you was, I guess we'll get some recommendations from you as to where we should adjust our ordinance in order to either attract applications or figure out how we might address any future application.
I appreciate that. I have to tell you, my own bias is that I'm not a big tax abatement person. I think it should be used selectively and on really key projects, because I've seen communities and I've worked in communities that go hog wild with this one. Sometimes I don't think they need to get the deal done. And I think we all have a hard enough time, every community growing its grand list, particularly built out communities. So I have a lot, if I am advocating for something, I really feel it needs, so I would like to understand the change in the ordinance with some legal counsel from Dan and Cindy, some guidance. And then I think our ordinance, the way it exists, is good. We could maybe add a piece to it that says under certain conditions and at the discretion of the tax partnership committee and the town council, we can expand it to this if people feel that the community benefit of jobs, all these criteria is there. So I wouldn't want to throw the door wide open to these 30-year things or whatever, because you get people, that they start coming out of the woodwork looking for tax incentives, and they try to play it like they can't do a project without it. If I told you how many projects beside 10 Trumbull have talked to me about a tax abatement that I said I don't support that, and the project has been done, you would be surprised. The Woodside is one of them. Came in to me, Vicky will tell you, I said, you don't need it. You don't need it. You don't have a cleanup on your site like 10 Trumbull had an environmental cleanup to do. They're the first one into this neighborhood investing. You're not the first one in. You know what I mean? The market's coming up in terms of the rents and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so there's been so many others. So that would be, I would need to understand the artist, what's changed, but I'm not thinking we should rewrite the whole thing. I'm thinking we should give ourselves a little window to be able to go there if we need to.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when we were doing 10 Trumbull and putting the ordinance together, we were conscious about not opening the barn doors to applicants where, they could propose something that would be within the limits and we might be in peril of a claim or litigation that we wrongfully refused an abatement. So, I
Right.
know that we're careful to have language in the actual agreement that it's completely discretionary on the part of the town,
Mhm.
the town council and any approving authorities. Um, I just want the committee to understand that we do want to invite economic development. We don't want to give away the store, and we don't want to have problems in the course of trying to accomplish what would be mutual goals for the town and any enterprise. Um, Let me ask membership, do we have any questions, follow-ups?
I have a question. This is Massimo, and this is just
Go
a
ahead,
general
Massimo.
question as I'm kind of getting up to speed. Understanding that, we don't want to be going hog wild on this, right? Is there any kind of information or feedback with relation to our existing program that would indicate it's too restrictive and we aren't getting, potential developers or projects to come to the table because of our, I guess, restrictive program? Just a general question.
So I can tell you that there's a recent approval that's under construction currently. It's a smaller facility, one-story facility in town that's under construction. They approached, saying, we're looking at this community and this community for this project. It's looking in other towns. Do we want a tax abatement? And I felt wasn't warranted. And the project got approved here and it's being built here. I'm not saying I always know, but I have a pretty good handle on when there's a real gap and when there isn't. I have a decent enough project financing background. I'm not going to say I'm, the expert, but I've worked in this area of economic development. So the Woodside's another example. I'm trying to think. I can't think of a project that came to me asking for this that hasn't gone forward or hasn't been built. There have been some projects that have stalled for other reasons, but it wasn't because they were looking for a tax abatement from us at this point. You have people that are always, have some business. I need my taxes cut. What can I do? You got to lower my taxes. Can I get an abatement? I mean, there's only so much of that. I look at it like this too. Why are we doing this company that's been here for this long and not this company that's been here for this long, unless there's some real issue with that? This is the ability to bring a new company here to purchase a declining asset that may be purchased by a nonprofit if they don't buy it, so I'm like, I want this deal to happen. And Vicky and they would, so process wise, when we got to the point of them submitting the formal application, I have a bunch of supplemental documents. I have a fact sheet I drafted up of just bullet points that I mentioned some of them here. I have a PowerPoint on their business. We have the existing tax card, what the property pays, the field card, and then they would fill out that application and they would actually come to our committee meeting and talk about what they want to do and why. But when Vicky and I went out to see them the last time, we've been working on this since October. I think it was about maybe like the end of January. They had a comparison of the costs of building there versus this project. They also have been negotiating. They're not quite under contract yet, but they're close because our ordinance says you have to be under contract. So that's also been holding this up. But they've been in a negotiation to make the numbers work. So their contract is drafted contingent upon support from the town. So we kind of
Mhm.
know their situation and, you know, um, we can only do what we can do, right? They've also asked in a separate, this doesn't,
You're freezing
Yeah.
again.
Rena has frozen.
Yes, Rena, you're frozen. So,
I'm back.
They're
I-
back.
You're
yes.
back.
okay, you're back, Rena. You
They've
were
asked for
freezing.
another, um, thing that is not related to this committee, but you should know in the context of the whole ask. They've asked if we could ask the town council to waive their building permit fees for their build out, which is only about a $35,000 ask, but they're trying to, they're trying to close this gap and they're trying from multiple directions. They've also been talking to the state of Connecticut to see if there's any help the state can give them because their work is quite specialized. So the way they have to build some areas out, they actually manufacture on site. Um, so, they're looking at a number of different ways. There's not a lot that the state has for a deal like this, unfortunately. Paul Lavoie, who some of you know, but he used to live in town. He's the manufacturing guy at the state. He's been trying to connect them to things, and they did get something certified where they're going to get sales tax relief on their building materials for their build out. So the state did come in with that. So they're piecing together a bunch of different programs to try to make this deal work. But there's not a whole lot that the state has.
So again, a tax abatement is something that's prospective. It doesn't have to do necessarily with construction. So let's just take an example of when a house is built on an empty lot. The lot's been assessed full value. The assessors can assess on an incremental basis as the house is built some additional value that can be taxed along the way. And then when the final certificate of occupancy is issued, then the full assessment kicks in. I'm not quite sure how the assessor's office would handle a large commercial construction event like this one in terms of incremental assessing. I would think we would have to address that in the abatement. Abatement agreements also generally call for forfeiture or termination of abatements if the beneficiary doesn't hit the levels that they're supposed to in terms of the construction value, the employment, and all the parameters that we put in there. I just was briefly looking at the ordinance. We have a 7-year abatement and a 10-year. I guess the statute, Dan said, allows us to go to 20.
30 now.
30. How many?
30.
30.
They just changed it a few years ago.
Yeah, so see, I mean, what I'm going back to what I said a little earlier. We don't want to open the barn doors and go necessarily out to 30. That is, beyond a lifetime of.
They'll be talking about us 30 years from now in the assessor's office, like, what did they say?
Well, they can curse us, but they better be careful.
Yeah, that's true.
So, these are the kind of considerations that we can take up, but, certainly going back, 8 years, 9 years, when we put this ordinance together, times have changed, costs are much higher. a $3 million project is not nearly as big as it was in 2017. And so probably adjustment of some of those figures would actually make the more significant requirement for eligibility if we raise that number. But these are things that we'll have to consider in a subsequent meeting.
The application that we have them file, which initially will come to me, in terms of the process, they file the initial application with the Economic Development Director. I go through it for like making sure it's complete and that they've filed everything that they're supposed to, and if there's any questions, and that's why I've been doing a little back and forth with them on their application. And then it comes, we present it in a meeting to this committee, and they would come and explain within the draft application that I've already seen. They have laid out their investment in the building, what they think the increment, like they've estimated a tax increase, what that would mean in terms of a value and tax increase, and then what the abatement would be. They have a chart in there, not that we have to agree with their numbers entirely, but they do have a logic and a rationale for what they laid out as it relates to how they're investing in the building and improving it, and how they think their taxes would be raised each year just based on existing tax increases in the town, and then the increase in value based on their investment.
Any other? Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, just from experience, having represented a developer in West Haven who got a similar tax abatement for a large scale redevelopment project, included in that abatement agreement was a clawback that if they sold the property prior to the end of the abatement, or specifically sold it to a nonprofit such that the property would be taken off the tax rolls, they would have to repay the amount of the abatement received. This was a couple $100 million development. So in the city of West Haven certainly doesn't like to leave any money lying around because they're constantly broke. But something else to consider for our agreements is a disincentive to sell the property before the town is able to reap the benefits of the project.
I think we have something in ours, and I think you brought this up when we were doing this, Jason, last time, that does allow it, that does not allow, it doesn't transfer or something like that. We'd have to look at the language, but I don't think that if they sell the property, the abatement transfers.
Well, that should be the case in any event.
Yeah, I think that's what it says, but I think you're right. And so this company, it's been around for 20 years. It's a privately held company. It's been growing at a rate of about 30% a year recently. It had a steady growth trajectory. And it's been growing significantly. And I can arrange, if this committee felt, or if the town council felt, they wanted a visit over to their existing site just to see where they are, what they do. I can make that happen, or if key representatives wanted to go. They are in a neighboring community. I'm not sure whether that community knows that they're considering a move out of there. It's not my place to say anything to anybody. I can tell you that you'd be bowled over by what they do. They are so jammed in their space too. There's stuff stacked everywhere. They've run out of, they're running out of space. In fact, one of the things I want to be able to do, if they come here or if they don't, I want them to do it if they're here, especially, is to introduce them to another new company that moved to Trumbull, Transpac. Transpac does specialized packaging for data centers, semiconductors, and specialty products. And they do all their packaging themselves now. This is the company we're trying to get here. And I was telling them, and they're struggling, it's always hard to get people to work and to teach them how to do this. And I said, we have a company that does this. You guys should talk, because then you can focus on your core business. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of other synergies that can happen. And part of building out our R&D and technology sectors is that the more companies we have here, the more we attract here. They want to be around. If you look at the site finders, it'll say we want to be where there's other R&D companies, right on the specs, for the real estate specs.
So Rena, this prospective applicant is not yet under contract for the building in question?
So they have a contract in hand. They've agreed to terms. They did have a lot of negotiation going on last 2 months, Carl. That's why I've held this off from we spoke, I don't know, a couple months
Yeah.
ago on this.
Mhm.
And it looks as if they're going to sign imminently. So I've asked them today, I sent them an email today for an update, and I don't see that they emailed me back. So I have to call them tomorrow morning. I'm just looking at my email to see if it came. No, they haven't responded to my update question.
Okay, well, that's good that they're in a serious position to come forward to us, so. Any other questions on the ordinance, the statute, the potential applicant? All right, is there any other business to discuss other than scheduling another meeting? I think offline, maybe I'll talk to Dan and maybe Jason and see if we can cobble together some suggestions for ordinance changes.
Sounds like a plan.
Yep. And I'm gonna go through it too, but I like the idea of only limiting the expansion, based on the committee, and certain criteria or something like that. So, okay, so what I'd like to do, I'm gonna follow up with the potential applicant tomorrow. And if people are available for, I think an in-person meeting might be better for a presentation and to meet the people, but I can also do a Zoom meeting. But I'd like to get that meeting set up the first week of April at the latest. Because then this has to go to the town council for approval. And that would have to wait till May. So, again, their purchase is contingent in the contract, contingent upon the town and so forth, so.
Well, I'm sure they have a bunch of other contingencies in their agreement too for
Yeah, they
inspections,
do.
financing,
They don't,
zoning
they're
approvals.
going to do a cash purchase of the building because they received financing for a new build that they were going to do next to their building. So that's why they have financing in place. And they have the money because they're either going to new build or they're gonna put the financing. They have that money already toward the building. I wouldn't say cash, but they have their financing already. So
and
that I know.
two
And
weeks from,
there's no zoning criteria because they're already an allowed use in the zone. There's really no, barring if they want new signage or, something like that. But it's,
well, 2 weeks from tonight is April 1st. Does that
is that
sound?
the town council meeting?
No, not
Do
till
we
the
have the
7th.
ECDC, on the first?
Um,
I
yeah,
think you're right.
yeah, I do have ECDC.
Yeah.
We can do it, what time can people get here? Cause we could always do it either before or right after ECDC. We can try to do ECDC earlier. I don't know what people's schedules are. I don't know.
Are we anticipating hearing an application and a presentation on it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And what I would do prior to that, we can work on the ordinance thing on a parallel, but I would send you the application, all the attachments, which are the existing taxes, the field card. I have a PowerPoint just presentation on their business, and I have notes that I've drafted on the project just to give people, okay? And then everybody can review that in advance. And then they would come in and talk about, you know, their needs, why are they wanting the building, what would they do with it, what kind of company is this? Why, what's their financing, you know, what is the gap that they're trying to close, that kind of thing.
What time is the ECDC meeting, or is that set?
We usually meet at 6:30, but if we poll the group, we can move our meeting earlier. I think folks generally are a little bit flexible, especially if they know we have economic development business following this. And two of our members are here. What do you guys think if we did our meeting like at 5:30?
From
That
my
would be fun.
perspective, yeah, from my perspective, Rena, if we're gonna do it in person, just my schedule, 6:30 is about the earliest I can do in person to get back.
If we
Um,
did, if we
So
did,
if we did the ECDC virtually earlier, that'd be okay.
okay, so if we did ECDC at 5:30 and then I can do is 7 o'clock or okay for this committee?
It's okay for me.
I mean, it's okay for me as well.
Sure.
Okay. So,
So let's plan for April 1st, Tuesday, 2 weeks from tonight. 7 o'clock in Town Hall. We just need a room. Hope there's a room available.
I think G can help us with the room.
Yeah, I can check that in the morning.
The Long Hill room should be reserved for ECDC already anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
You know, G, I'm thinking we can do ECDC at 6 to 7.
Okay, I'll get on that.
We've
tomorrow.
been taking an hour. We don't have a presentation at the committee.
Do we want to move it virtual? That might make it easier for people.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll poll people tomorrow.
I mean, I don't see it being a long meeting because the last two meetings were a little longer because we had presentations, we were drafting letters of support. But I think this is just sort of an update meeting.
I think so, yeah.
Anything else from anyone? We don't have any old business because we just started. I guess that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
We have a second. Thank you, Mike.
I second.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're all in favor, so we'll see you in 2 weeks. If we have some information in terms of the analysis between the statute and the ordinance, we'll circulate that so that we can be prepared for our next meeting.
That'd be great.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.